Welcome. In this video, I'll be talking about sausages. Sausage has been made from the beginning of time, using all those underutilized parts of an animal, grinding it up, and adding different flavorings to make these delicacies. Sausage has continued to be a tradition through today, with hundreds of varieties available. Sausage is a mixture of seasoned ground meat and fat. Again, it was originally created to use those trimmings. However, now wide varieties of cuts are used to create all these different amazing sausages. There are three main parts to any sausage. The forcemeat that we'll talk about, which is the main part of the sausage. Then you have the casing. Generally, it's going to be encased in this. However, fresh sausage like sausage patties don't have the casing. And then internal garnishes, which could be other ingredients. So if you've had a chicken jalapeno cheddar sausage, the cheddar cheese and the jalapenos are additional garnishes found within. You'll notice up here, there's a large variety of either the smoked sausage, we have some fresh sausage, cured sausage. This looks like a chicken sausage. There are, again, so many different types of sausages here. There are, if we need to categorize them, three main types of sausage. You have your fresh sausages, your cured sausages, and emulsified sausages. Let's start off with a standard grind sausage. So your fresh sausages include your breakfast sausage here that you see, as well as these that are encased in the ropes. Some of these sausages then could be taken further and allowed to cure over time and then smoked. They would be dried out first slightly so a pellicle would form. But there are some that are just going to be hung to continue to dry, and some that could be cold smoked, as well as some that are going to be hot smoked. Your fresh sausages have more of a rustic feel to them. They are a lot coarser. You can see separation of meat and fat within them. Your emulsified sausage, then, is completely different in that, think of with your hollandaise sauce, that emulsification where you're binding two unmixable items together and suspending them as one product. Notice down here the difference of this sausage, where it looks pretty solid. You don't really see a difference between the meat and the fat. Whereas up here, you can see the difference of meat and fat, the speckles here, and it's inside a casing. The emulsified sausages generally are going to have some additional liquid added into it, really binding it together and really making a smooth forcemeat. Here's an example of a seafood or a chicken sausage, which generally is going to be emulsified sausage as well. So what kind of ingredients go into sausage? By far, the pig is the king, remember, from your textbook. So really, you can utilize a lot of the different cuts from the hog. Your fat back runs right along the skin at the top. That is going to be the most common fat you're going to use, and I have it pictured here below. Generally, from the belly, you will have a large amount of fat as well. However, that's usually saved to make bacon, or you can make salt pork, again, from the trimmings there. Salt pork can also be made from this fat back. This fat back is a really great fat in that it stays solid and will grind easily. You certainly could use other beef and veal fat, but it tends to be a lot harder because there's a lot of connective tissue also going through there. And poultry fat tends to be a little too slimy, for lack of better words. It really gets stuck in your grinder. So pork fat generally seems to be added to just about any sausage. You also have some fat from the jowl area here, as well as from the kidneys, and then just in general in any trim that you might have in breaking down a whole hog. What kind of flavorings can you add to your ingredients or to your sausage? Really anything. Just keep in mind that the seasoning will be there throughout the entire batch. So if you're looking to use, say, an Italian sausage in several different recipes, you want to make sure it's not overpowering in any specific seasoning. And then there's also some binders in there, specifically with emulsified sausages. You want to have maybe some dry milk solids or make a panada, something that will help to bind that liquid again with the fat and the meat. And again, going back to the different meats, here we have the hog being king, but you could have beef sausage, you could have chicken sausage, seafood sausage. We're actually making a couple different varieties in class ourselves. Caseins are the next major ingredient I want to talk about. Really, caseins have 6 important functions. They help for portion control, and that if you are making links, they will be the same size, it will weigh the same, and then your cost will be the same. It definitely holds the sausage together while it cooks. Even though there's a lot of fat here, pork fat doesn't melt down as much as your beef fat does. So you want to encase it, you want to keep it in there and keep all that moisture. It also distinguishes one from another. I took a tour of Hatfield's pork plant, and they ended up, all of the hot dogs had these yellow and black striped casings on it. And someone asked why, and they said, well, so that we know that's a certain type of hot dog. The casings come off before they sell them, but it was one way for them to distinguish the different types of hot dogs. Definitely visual appeal. Again, while you're cooking it, it keeps a consistent shape. The texture interest as well. It gives a little bit of a different bite to it. And then the pellicle formation is specifically if you're going to be smoking any of your sausages. You want to form a skin around your sausage that will absorb that smoky flavor. There are 2 main types of casings if we need to break them down into their makeup. So we have natural casings, and then we have synthetic casings. In the picture down below here, the synthetic casings are right in the middle. These are going to be made or manufactured casings, versus your natural casings are going to be the intestines are coming from the stomach. The different types of casings then, if we're looking at your natural casings, and let's just talk about the natural casings here. Think of the animal. A sheep is much smaller than a cow is. So the smaller the animal, the smaller the intestines and stomach would be, the smaller the casings will be. So your sheep is the smallest of these animals, then the hog, and then you would have beef casings as well. So they have specific names to them, and they have specific sizes. But in general, I'm looking for a sheep casing if I'm talking about breakfast sausage, seafood sausage that I want to lightly poach, any smaller type of sausage. And then I'm going to be using the hog casings for generally most of my other fresh sausages, and saving those beef casings if I was making, let's say, like a bologna or mortadella, something that is a lot larger in size. They're sold as salt-packed or pre-flushed. So the pre-flushed is going to be in more of a water solution, in which case you're just going to rinse them out, maybe soak them for 30 minutes before using them. But the ones that are going to be salt-packed, which are shelf-stable, those you definitely need to soak overnight and make sure you flush extremely well. The last thing you need is even more salt to your sausage here. Here you can see these casings that are sold have these tubes running down them. They are individual casings versus a hank, which in this bag it's going to be several casings all combined. So you'll end up starting to pull each casing out and finally get to the point where you have enough and just cut it off. Versus here, you have individual ones ready to go, already cut off in sections for you. Typically, your casings are going to be sold as hanks. What does a hank fill? Generally around 40 pounds of sausage. However, that's like saying a recipe makes 3 servings. It depends on who's making it. It depends how much waste there is. Are you cutting each individual link off, or are you making one long rope and twisting them? It really depends what you're doing with it as to how many pounds of meat you can pack into one hank. But rule of thumb, about 40 pounds of meat per hank. Manufactured casings then, again, are ones that are going to be made. So you do have edible ones with your collagen casings that are made from cattle hide. Generally, you'll need to soak them for about 24 hours. However, the chart on the right here really just talks about soaking non-edible ones for a few minutes. And that's one of the, I guess, advantages here of using the collagen casings is that you won't necessarily have to soak the edible ones. So here you can see that they're already in these rings. They kind of look like a stick of pepperoni or salami there, but it's something that they are very much condensed. So think of a big slinky. Once you go and put it on your stuffer, you can then, as it starts stuffing, it will expand out. One of these little coils that are maybe about a foot long can end up being easily 40 feet in length, fully stretched out. So there's a couple other reasons why you might want to use collagen. Again, the ease of use, the speed of use, the consistent size. Your sausage will stay that size versus how much pressure you put on it. And you'll all get to experience that as you're encasing your own sausage. Down at the bottom here, you have those synthetic casings. These are plastic or made with plant fibers. They're not edible and must be peeled off. They do have some benefits when you're talking about a long curing process, to where it really captures in all of the moisture and flavor in your cured meats. However, again, these are generally going to be used for larger items that are going to be slowly cured, and that way it can be peeled off right before using. You certainly would not want to use synthetic ones on, say, hot dogs, something that you're going to be making a lot of and having to peel that off. You want to make sure that you're keeping them, again, for those larger items. So equipment. We have grinding equipment, mixing equipment, and then we'll have our stuffing equipment. I want to start off with the grinders, though. You could certainly have an attachment to a KitchenAid mixer. We have Hobart mixers that we have the attachments for. You could have individual grinders available really at any sporting goods store. Gander Mountain has, I think, several that we had purchased before. These are freestanding units, and really what I recommend when you go and get a grinder, make sure that you spend some quality money on it. Spending $60, $70 on a grinder, it may work for you one time, and then it will start to overheat. You really want to invest in a good grinder if you're going to be grinding a lot of meat. So here are the parts here. You have your feeding pan, which would go on top. This is where you would put all of the meat in, and notice the size of the hole. So when you're cutting your pork or whatever your meat is to grind, you want to make sure that it would fit within that hole and just drop down in there. You can use this feed stomper here to push it through, but generally you want it again to just be able to fit down in that side. Then it would go down through this cylinder here, and then inside here would be this worm, also called an auger. I call it a worm. And what happens is when it's in here, and as the machine's on, it will spin around, actually grabbing that meat and forcing it through, and to which case it will come into contact with this knife, and then it would force it out through one of these grinding plates. There's different sizes here, and that's what progressive grinding means. You would start with a larger die, get a big grind on it, then start going to a smaller one and a smaller one, kind of similar to when you're making pasta. You keep getting that dough thinner and thinner until you're ready to go. So if there was ever a progressive grinding note in your recipes, that's referring to grinding it in multiple sizes. So it really makes a nice uniform mixture there. And then to seal this all off, once you have the worm in there, then you have the knife and the grinding plates, then you would put this ring on to seal it, as you can see right here. I did include a video in this week's lesson content so that you can check out really the operating and tips for the grinding parts. You also need a food processor, maybe a rotation chopper, depending on what you might have in your kitchen. But for mixing, certainly a KitchenAid mixer or a Hobart really does the trick well. And then for encasing, here's an equipment, a sausage stuffer, a vertical sausage stuffer. So we'll put the meat right in here and then be able to crank it, and it'll force the meat down and out through the tube. Again, I've included a video for you to be able to check out how we're going to add the casing here and then funnel that meat out through. You also will need some twine, maybe a ruler if you're making lengths, some sort of, little teasing needles or any type of clips. Really, the twine works well with just tying it off. There's 4 stages of sausage production. You'll hear the grinding stage, the mixing, encasing, and then the finishing or cooking. Again, sometimes you'll fabricate your meat and season it and let it sit for over 24 hours to cure. Then you'll go through the grinding process, always mixing to make a nice smooth paste. Then encasing it, and then to finish off with, you would be cooking or smoking. It is crucial that you maintain cold temperatures with this whole process. and as much as possible try to get your ratios of a 70 to 30